Well, friends, if you can see my face and hear my voice, then you realize I'm not Megan Pennington. She's not with us at the moment, but I am Jim Skiff. I'm always happy to be here on the Fire Pit. And today we have a really wonderful guest. Becks is a queer scholar and musician focusing their work on community engagement and placemaking through music and agriculture. As a musician, Becks works to create events that bridge the divisions in our communities. Their scholarship focuses on queer Appalachian music and the importance that music traditions hold, both in Appalachian communities and in the queer community. Bex is also the project manager of Plaid Dog Recording Studios in Boston, Massachusetts, managing crowdfunding and marketing for artists who record at that studio. Plaid Dog's crowdfunding model allows artists who may be unable to access studio spaces to record quality music without accruing any out of pocket costs. Bex uses this platform to empower artists from all backgrounds to record and release music. And that is actually how I met Bex. Through Plaid Dog, I'm actually going to be recording a single with them in September and doing some crowdfunding for an album project. And I got to talking with her, and I realized that they are from Morgantown, just a little bit south of the border, which is certainly within our interest here at Scarfire Radio. And I'd like to welcome Bex to our program. Welcome, Bex. I'm so glad you're here. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. Super stoked to be chatting with you today.
Oh, I'm stoked too. We have some really great music to listen to coming up a little bit later in the show. But first, I'd like our listeners to get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, your musical background in particular. And I'm really enjoying your original songwriting, which comes out of our traditional forms. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into music in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I come from a very musical family. My family comes from the Ohio River Valley, at least on my mom's side. All musicians. My great uncle is a band instrument repair tech. He just retired last week. He worked for the CA House in St. Clairsville. I have music in my blood. I've been humming longer than I could talk. And I was taught to harmonize, then to go girls at Nickel Creek at a really young age. And I've always just had this love for music. I started taking piano lessons pretty young. And then I went to school for music and sort of realized that wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing. So I switched gears and I started looking at music from more of an academic lens. So I transferred to Appalachian State, where I did an undergraduate interdisciplinary studies self-design degree in Appalachian ethnomusicology. And then I just graduated in May with my master's in Appalachian Studies with a concentration in music and culture. And I did my thesis in queer musicology in Appalachia. And so my craft and my practice is really based in the folk tradition, taking stories and from my own life, from my family, from people that I know, and turning them into music, and learning songs from other people and building community through that is something that I'm really passionate about. And you can ask anybody that knows me, but wherever I go, I'll find a group of old-time musicians to play music with.
Well, I certainly have enjoyed listening to your tracks, and your family roots and your roots in Appalachia are very apparent. I actually worked with a guy who was part of the Foxfire project at Apple Shop in, I believe that's in Kentucky, where they came up with the initial Foxfire play. And I actually did the David Carradine part in production of Foxfire, mainly because I can play guitar and also act a little bit. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about your cultural and rootsy experiences in Appalachia and some of the musicians that you've gotten to play with and gotten to meet.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's so awesome about Foxfire. I'm a big fan and Apple Shop. One of my faculty at App State, Tom Hantel, worked with Apple Shop forever, and we're still pretty closely connected at Appalachian State with Apple Shop. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
so
beautiful. Just so you know, I worked for Mad River Theater Works for a number of years over in Ohio, and Jeff Hooper, their director, is the guy who went to Apple Shop. And we part of what we did was to interview seniors from um, the Midwest who had grown up during the Depression and all the tremendous changes that happened over the last century, and then we would create short plays about their experiences with students who had actually interviewed them and gotten them to talk about their stories. So it was a great way of reconnecting the generations in our community, and I'm certain you have some similar experiences.
yeah, I think like studying place-based music and playing place-based music, you can't really, I mean, I guess you can really do it without necessarily tying yourself to place, but in my opinion and in my practice, you learn the music of the place that you are in, and I think it ties you not only to that location and to the earth and grounds you there, but it also brings you closer to the people who are living there, and who have lived there. I was in Boone, North Carolina, for 3.5 years when I went to Appalachian State, and that's not a long time to be somewhere, but to feel like really to really live in a place, I think you have to know the music of that place. And so in my time that I spent in Boone, one of my faculty mentors, Trevor McKenzie, he's a wonderful fiddle player, wonderful human being, and an encyclopedia of knowledge of place-based music. I had the fortune of studying with him at Appalachian State, and I really learned a lot about the music of this region. Living in Southern Appalachia sort of made me realize that my conception of the region was very different because my conception of the region is the Ohio River Valley. It's steamboat town. It's more industrial as opposed to Boone, North Carolina, where like logging and tobacco were sort of bigger industries. And so the music is different and the instrumentation is different because the people that moved to that part of Appalachia um, weren't the same as the people that moved to Northern Appalachia. And so in Southern Appalachia, you're less likely to find the accordion, you're less likely to find a dulcimer, a hammer dulcimer specifically. But here in West Virginia, Southern Pennsylvania, and Southern Ohio, you're going to find that more. And so the music that I sort of found myself drawn to was the music of this sort of Ohio River Valley pocket.
Well, talk to us a little bit about Dawn Masters. It's a very beautiful track, and I'm sorry, very beautiful track, and it also a bit sad and melancholy, and coming from a beautiful place. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your state of mind writing the song and something about the production that we're going to hear on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that song, it's just Dawn. I think I sent you the master file,
Oh
but
yeah.
the song is called Dawn. And so I originally went to music school in Oklahoma City. And so when I was out there, I had a friend who sent me a picture of a gravestone, that said Dawn Davis. And it was like loving mother, loving wife, and essentially just said like we don't know where her body is, which really struck me. I've never seen that on a gravestone before. So I looked this up, and it was this woman who had like struggled with a long bout of mental health issues. And she had taken her own life somewhere in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. And she just left a note for her family and basically said, like, don't come find me. Like, that's what I want. And so her daughter had posted for the entire month, I think it was April, like 30 days of dawn in memory of her mother. And so I was just really struck by this, like the memories of this woman whose gravestone my friend had come across. So I turned those those Facebook posts and her obituary and just kind of what I could gather online into a song kind of inspired by the folk traditions of sort of ballads and singing these mournful sort of laments. And that's kind of where Dawn came from. And then, so I work for Plaid Dog Recording now, but actually, this song was recorded at Plaid Dog. Before I worked for the studio, I was selected as one of the rising artists from the Rising Artist Talent Search. And I went through a process of prep work and crowdfunded for my debut EP with the studio. And Dawn is one of the songs that I recorded with the studio before I worked for the studio.
It seems that most everyone who works for Plaid Dog is also an artist in their own right, which I think is a wonderful advantage of working with all you folks. And this particular track, the production on it is just so haunting. The textures are so rich. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the instrumentation that we're going to hear on this beautiful song?
Yeah, so Dawn actually is one of the first songs that I wrote on guitar for myself. I had picked up guitar my freshman year of college, so at that point I had been playing guitar for maybe 5 months or so. And I knew I wanted it to be like sort of contemplative and finger picking and sort of meditative, honoring not only this woman, Dawn, but also sort of the double entendre of light and of like something new beginning. And so the guitar sort of consists of this really rhythmic, um, repetitive pattern. But then with the help of Ryan Gallagher, who is my producer for this track and this EP. We worked together to sort of build this like big orchestral swell. So we brought in an upright bass player, and we brought in a fiddle player and another guitarist to help build out the sound, and a drummer. And I could never have dreamed of sort of orchestrating these sounds without the help of the production team at Plaid Dog. Um, I had a composition background and I knew I wanted these instruments, but I never would have been able to write these songs the way that I did. And actually, it's funny, Dawn specifically, I told Ryan, I was like, I really am not hearing drums. Like, I don't think that's what I want. And he was like, okay, I just like had an idea and you can say that you hate it. And I had been sitting on this song for like 2 years at that point. So I'd been playing it the same way and hearing it the same way for a long time. And he's like, I just threw some drums on. Let me know what you think. And I was like, oh my God, that's what the song needed. And so it has drums and it sounds amazing.
Well, I think it's the perfect time for our listeners to hear Dawn by Becks.
A friend of mine told me she goes to the graveyard when it gets too much to bear. I asked her why. She said, because nobody stares when you cry there. Hallowed ground, strangers bonded by their sadness. Individual pain, collective descent into madness. Dawn Davis, a name on a headstone, location of her body unknown. She took her own life in a field in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. Tragic story, tragic life in loving memory of a loving wife. But it said on her epitaph she struggled with her brain. Dawn Davis, a woman of so many talents. Broken home baby, but she managed to find some
friends, that was Dawn by Becks. We're so glad to have Becks in the studio with us. And I think it's so cool that you began the process of recording this music as a rising artist with Plaid Dog, and now you're actually working for them as a project manager. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, so I had recorded my I ran my crowdfunding campaign with the studio in 2022 and I recorded the EP in January of 2023. And then released it later that year. I think it was in March of that year of 2023. And then I went to grad school at Appalachian State and, I had some graduate position, but I was sort of looking for something that I could do on top of that to, you know, make some money. And I saw that Plaid Dog was hiring a project manager. And my experience with them was so wonderful. And I really was so fond of Sam, who was the previous project manager. I figured I'd apply. And Mike got back to me pretty quickly and actually had COVID when we did our interview in January of 2024. So it was like really serendipitous. Like all of this sort of happened around the same time frame as me recording the rest of the project. Like I recorded the project in early January of 23, and then of 2024 I applied and eventually I was hired to work as the project manager. And so since working for the studio, there were some things that when I ran my crowdfunding campaign, I was really like, oh, this would have been really awesome if we had that opportunity to do things this way. So I was able to sort of fold some things into the process, especially thinking in terms of social media, and folding in some more of the crowdfunding marketing into the prep process. And yeah, it's been really great. And also working with Ryan, who's my producer when I did my project, and working with Carter Sanders, who's Jimmy's producer. And so now that I work for the studio, I was able to make a trip up to Boston, and it ended up being 2 years to the day, actually, that I recorded my first project, that I recorded my debut album with the studio this year in January.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how things look, perhaps a little different from the perspective of the project manager and the perspective of the artist? I think a lot of our listeners are also singer-songwriters, recording artists, and I know a lot of people have really been interested in Plaid Dog and the experience. You said it was really wonderful and it was so great you ended up working for them. Could you elaborate just a little bit on that, on your involvement and how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so just to kind of give you the rundown of the way that things are run. So essentially what the studio does is we help artists crowdfund to afford the studio time. So we'll help you run and manage a crowdfunding campaign. We do sort of three phases. The first phase is campaign prep. So that's the phase that Jimmy's in right now. So what we do is we meet once a week and we get together all the marketing materials, promo, essentially all the items that we need to like successfully run and launch this crowdfunding campaign. And then towards the tail end of that process, artists, including myself when I ran my campaign, come out to the studio and record a single and a pitch video. And so we use those two items to sort of launch the campaign using the song and the pitch video as sort of like proof of concepts. Like, hey, this is what we've been able to do so far. If you like what you hear, donate so I can head back to the studio to finish the rest of the project. And then the crowdfunding campaign runs for 39 days. In that prep phase, we do a lot of the like content creation ahead of time to make sure that everyone's feeling good and feeling prepared going into the crowdfunding campaign. And then after the fundraiser wraps, that's when you record the rest of the project. Um, you'd meet with your producer and do pre-production meetings, and then you'd head back out to the studio to finish the rest of the project. And so from an artist side of things, like having that support, not only to record the music, but also to learn the marketing side of things was invaluable to me. And you kind of get a sense of like what works and what doesn't marketing wise for you and your audience. And then you sort of walk away with a newsletter, just sort of by accident of everybody that's contributed to the project. You kind of build out that network of folks. And then also you tap into the Plaid Dog network of other artists that have completed this process. And as the project manager, I get to see everybody's campaigns. I'm the only project manager for the studio, so I work with everybody. I'm a pretty busy person working with all these artists and, working with creatives has its challenges. But, as a creative myself and having been through the process myself, I think it gives me an advantage in like helping people not only understand what they're doing, but why they're doing what they're doing and how that benefits them, both in the crowdfunding and in the future.
Well, I can certainly vouch for the fact that all your crowdfunding platforms and tools are very artist friendly. And I've been really impressed with the whole process. And I was amazed at how quickly I was able to raise the funds necessary to create my first single with Plaid Dog, which I'm going to do a little bit later on in September. Um, Perhaps you could talk to us a little bit now about the next track that we're going to hear. Here in Pittsburgh, we're known as the City of Bridges. And the track that we're going to listen to next is Burn That Bridge When I Get to It. I love this track, Bex. Tell us about it and how it came about.
Yeah, so this song, Burn That Bridge When I Get to It, is something that my Uncle Charles said all the time, and I just thought it was hilarious. And I wanted to use it in a song, so I kind of wrote something, and I was like, I don't know where this comes from. Like, it's really angry and just doesn't really feel like the rest of my music, but I wasn't like really entirely sure what it was about. And then a few months later, something in my life happened, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I understand where that came from." And so I actually went back and retooled some of the lyrics to be even more specific to the situation that I was in. So there's another version floating around on the internet where the lyrics are like vague and don't really make a ton of sense until I rewrote them. And so I wrote this song on the guitar, and then I kind of filled it in with some clawhammer banjo. And I knew I wanted this to be on the project. It's got a good hook. It's a funny burn that bridge when I get to it is sort of this uh bastardization of a common phrase. So I thought it would be like a good track. And this one is actually going to be available for streaming on August 22nd. I'm running a pre-save campaign now, so if you like the song, you can pre-save it and it'll be out soon. And this will be one of the singles that's released off of the new album, Boxer in the Ring.
Well, without further ado, let's give a listen to Burn That Bridge When I Get to It by Becks.
Feel it coming, why aren't you running away? This will destroy you too. Bend over backwards, try to find something to say. You can't ignore the truth. Shoulder the burden, Sisyphus by my design. Rolling around in the dirt. I'm not afraid to admit it was crossing a line. I just can't find the words, and I'll burn that bridge when I get to it, when I get to it, when I get to it, and I'll stifle my rage, bottles full of it, bottles full of it, bottles full of it. I know that it does no good living in the shoulds, living in the could have told you so many things that I would have said. Better off just letting you in this time. doing this? Did you say what you needed to say? Biting my tongue till it bleeds, land your blows to miss. No point in fighting today. I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. When I get to it. When I get to it. And I'll stifle my rage. Bottles full of it. Bottles full of it. Bottles full of it. I know that I won't get far on my own. 2 feet on my own. 2 feet too tired when you see me coming. You cross the street, and I desperately wanna win this time around. And I'm 3 drinks deep, and I can't feel my hands. I'm so sick of never knowing where I stand. Am I allowed to change my mind? 'Cause I've been stubborn my whole life and I don't know. Am I bending 'cause I don't know where to go? And I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. When I get to it. When I get to it. And I'll stifle my rage. Bottles full of it. Bottles full of it. Bottles full of it. I know that I won't get far on my own. 2 feet on my own. 2 feet. I'm tired when you see me coming. You cross the street, and I desperately wanna win this time around.
That was Burn That Bridge When I Get to It by Becks. Really, it has been a great pleasure chatting with you, Becks. Why don't you talk to us about your upcoming events? I know you're doing some fundraising events for the flood victims in West Virginia, and that's a great undertaking and project. Please tell us what's going on and what else you have coming up.
Yeah, so I was in Western North Carolina when Hurricane Helene happened. So I became pretty involved with flood relief there. And we as Appalachians are just gonna have to lift ourselves up because the state is not gonna help us. And I think it's time that we realize that we're all in the mud together. So we need to get off of our high horses and put our boots on and help each other. Because no amount of, mudslinging is gonna clean anything up. And so mutual aid organizations are going to be the only way forward in this political climate. And I think music organizing is the way to do that. So me and my co-organizers, Gray and Griffin, here in Morgantown, decided to put on a flood relief benefit concert for the flooding that happened in Wheeling on June 14th of 2025. Um, and that is a part of this region that I'm very familiar with, and my family lives in Martins Ferry, and I've spent some time in Wheeling, and I felt drawn to continue doing the work that I was doing in Western North Carolina. I knew I was going to live through another flood at some point in my life. I didn't think it would be 8 months after the last one. But you know what? It's my second rodeo at this, and I have learned a lot about what to do and what not to do, and how to organize and how not to organize, who to include, who not to include. And so it's been really um, helpful to have that background in doing this. And so when I suggested that we do a benefit concert, because that's something that we did in Western North Carolina. And if anybody's interested in looking at the organization that I work for there, it's State Line Resource Station. They're wonderful. They're still doing the work. We are still getting grant funds out to people that were impacted by Hurricane Helene, and helping the communities in Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee repair and recover and attain resiliency in themselves. And when I was working for State Line, and I still do work for State Line, but when I was living there, I did some concert organizing, and we put on a benefit concert where we did all John Prine songs, called In Spite of It All. And so we put together a band of local musicians, and we raised a good bit of money for flood relief organizations. So it kind of felt like the next thing to do here was to start doing the same thing. And Gray suggested that we, instead of just doing one-off concerts, sort of continued to do and like quarterly shows, and eventually we'd like to build up into a festival. And that sort of snowballed into us working on our articles of incorporation for a nonprofit as the West Virginia People's Flood Relief Fund. The state of West Virginia isn't going to help. Our representatives are in the pockets of corporations who don't have the interests of West Virginians at heart. And so, with the Flood Relief Fund, we're going to continue having these concerts. And instead of the benefit shows being, a reaction to the flooding, it'll be proactive. We'll have a pot of money that we can allocate to local mutual aid organizations in these places where floods are happening. Every single county in West Virginia has had a catastrophic flood in the last 50 years. West Virginia is the most flood prone state in the US that's inland. It's going to keep happening. And the mitigation and remediation for floodplains isn't going to happen in this administration, nor was it going to happen in the previous administration. Appalachia has been sort of left behind by the government, and it's always been Appalachians helping Appalachians, and this is no different.
Yes, I had a friend who she had a house in Fort Myers, Florida, until Hurricane Ian came along and just totally devastated that whole area. So she got herself a mobile home and she moved to Chimney Rock, North Carolina, just in time to experience another major flood there. And so she said, Jim, I'm thinking of moving to Pittsburgh. And I was like, I don't know, Leslie, you may not like it here, but certainly I'm not saying it was her fault, but people are experiencing horrific flooding everywhere, not just in our country, around the world. Climate change is a real thing, and you can pretend it's not here, but all you got to do is look around. We have a major flood event of 100 years several times a year now. And
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your efforts in assisting the people of North Carolina and also West Virginia, because it doesn't look like our government's really interested in helping us out too much anymore. They're interested in, helping the top 1%, and that's about it. So God bless you in your efforts. Do you have any events scheduled where you're going to be performing besides our Scarfire Showcase, which Becks has already said that they would be very happy to perform at the end of August. So we'll make sure and keep you all aware. Anything else coming up on your immediate calendar, Becks?
I am playing a show here in Morgantown on the 23rd. I'm not sure when this is airing, but on the 23rd at 123 Pleasant Street. And just keep your eyes peeled. We're working on getting everything set up for the West Virginia People's Flood Relief Fund. But we will be doing an album release show as a fundraiser for the nonprofit, which will include CD and vinyl release. So if that's something that you're interested in, even if you can't make it down to Morgantown, you can still help us out in our efforts to raise funds for the people of West Virginia in these flood events.
Well, sooner or later, we are all going to figure out a way to help each other eventually. which is the name of the final track that we're going to listen to. This is another bittersweet and beautifully textured song. I love your lyrics. Talk to us about Eventually.
Yeah, so I was listening to a lot of Brandy Carlisle when I wrote the song, which you can tell if you listen to it. And so my partner and I live together now, but at the time that I wrote this song, we were long distance, and it just was sort of this moment of like I'm tired of like being so far from you, but I also don't want this to happen until we're both ready. And so this song is sort of a meditation on that. It's a meditation on getting older and like realizing that time with people that you love is limited. And so this song is it's as close to a love song as I get. I write a lot of sad music. So it's sad, it's sweet. Um and it sort of also acts as a moment for me to process like I have lost a lot of people in my life recently, and just sort of watching that happen made me more appreciative of the time that we do have together. And yeah, so this song was also recorded at Plaid Dog. I recorded this with Carter Sanders. He was the main producer on this track, who's Jimmy's producer for his project. And so Carter and I worked on this song together. And so there's when you listen to it, there's kind of like a tapping or lap pats is what it is. But I wanted to mimic the sort of percussive dance and flat footing that you find pretty commonly in Appalachian folk tunes. And I didn't want to dance on my own track, and plus I'm not that good at flat footing. I can, but I wanted that feel and that emphasis and the syncopation to kind of like drive the music forward. So that's what you'll hear is us patting our laps.
Well, Bex, I must say it has been a great pleasure chatting with you, and I'm really looking forward to continuing my work with Flat Dog Recording, and we'll be sure to keep all our listeners informed as to the progress of that. We're going to look forward to hearing your wonderful music at our Scarfire Showcase coming up at the end of August. And right now, let's all give a listen to this beautiful track, Eventually by Becks. All right. Well, I'm sorry that Megan didn't make it, but
Take all the time that you need. When you're ready to go, we'll go. But I know make sure you're watching your speed. If you wanna slow down, slow down. Let the brakes make that sound, And I hate stopping to catch my breath, but I love you and I'm scared to death that the day will come eventually that you'll leave. Please, please, please. Counting down the days until on YouTube.